Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of The Yard. I'm your host, Darryl Scotti, and today we have with us Corey Charles Lerios, songwriter, pianist, vocalist, and founding member of a platinum-selling band you might remember, Pablo Cruz. My gosh. He began his music career with the band Stone Ground before forming Pablo Cruz in 1973. The band achieved significant success with hits like Love Will Find a Way, What You Gonna Do, But When She's... After the band disbanded in 1986, Larios transitioned from composing for film and TV, co-founding Lerios DeAndrea Music Works, which produced scores for shows like Baywatch and Days of Our Lives. After hiatus, the Pablo Cruz band reunited in 2005 and continues to this day, performing across the U.S. and Canada, delivering energetic live shows. Larios continues to tour with Pablo and released an EP in 2015 under the name Corey Charles. We're excited to have Corey in the yard with us today. Let's get into it. And don't forget, stick around to the end for two great questions you don't want to miss. All right. Corey, thanks for coming into the yard with us, man. So good to see you. I've been looking forward to this, man.
Yeah, so have I.
Thank you, man. And, you know, I've been such a huge fan. I remember hearing your music when I was a younger man. And, you know, I always just loved the vibe of the music, those two hits, you know, What You Gonna Do, and your vibe, and the whole Pablo Cruz thing was just when did you know, when you were young, that this is what you wanted to spend your life at?
Well, it just sort of came about. I mean, initially I was, you know, I've just always played in bands since I was about 13. I started playing piano when I was really young. Took a lot of lessons and then just sort of went off and just started, you know, creating my own music. But I was a business major, and I was supposed to go to law school, and I got a deal with Warner Brothers when I was 20, and I just didn't. I went to the piano teacher that I was studying with, a guy named Philip Yenny, and I told him about it. He goes, "Oh, you can always come back," and he goes, "You should take the opportunity." So I never looked back. So I really decided that when I was probably 20 years old that I would, pursue it. And the record business and everything was a lot different back then. There was a lot more, flexibility as far as getting things going.
You know, you say to these young people today, I come from vinyl. They don't really understand that. Although vinyl's making its way back, and I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
So you got a deal. You were young. You were with Warner Brothers. You're writing music, and you had a couple other bands, or you were with another band before Pablo, and then this whole vibe. That was kind of an interesting era.
It was an amazing era. When I was 17, my father passed away when I was 16, and a friend of his, who was a really good friend of his, said, if there's anything I can do to help you out, if you want to, I'm there for you. And so when I turned 17, I was a big skier, and I was in Tahoe all the time, and the dream gig was playing a show in Tahoe when you're like 17, 18 years old.
Yeah.
So that's really where I got started. I actually opened a club in Lake Tahoe in 1968, and it was my club. I owned it. And you could never do what we did then. I was the youngest member of the Chamber of Commerce in Lake Tahoe, South Shore, which was Nevada.
Sure.
And we brought bands up every weekend. It was a teenage nightclub, and that's when I think probably that's really when I started to realize what a cool thing it would be to be in a band. And I had a band. We played every night in the summer, and we opened the club for like 90 days, and that was it. Closed it. And it was pretty fun. It was a lot of fun. I mean, we were out of control, really, but there were so many bands that wanted to play in Tahoe. And I had people like a band called Fritz Raybine Memorial Band, which was Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham.
Sure.
And they'd come up and play for the weekend for like $200 a night.
Yeah. Out of San Jose.
Yeah, exactly. And and then we expanded the next summer of '69, and we had 2 clubs up there. I went partners with somebody up there, and we had everybody, man, from the city, like Sons of Champlin, Tower of Power, Santana, just before they played Woodstock. It was an amazing time, but it also got the wheels turning as which for me was like, which side did I want to be on? Because being a promoter is really tough, and I wanted to play. And so that's when I, decided, and I had a band. We had a band the whole time. And in fact, the guy who played drums in that band, and even back in '68, was Steve Price, who was the original drummer of Pablo Cruz. He played with us for, the whole duration of the band up until a few years ago. Mm-hmm. But that's kind of how, you sort of make those decisions at that point in time. And
the dots, I've worn a few hats too. I've owned businesses, I still do, and restaurants, and as when I was managing acts like Larry and his band and some of the other artists that I worked with, I never really took the musician songwriter hat off that I wore, as a young boy. Although they didn't really know that's what, because when I was doing whatever I was doing, that's what I'm doing, And so I relate to what you're saying, that if you've got in your blood and what you have done and what you've created, when you're doing something else, you're kind of like a fish out of water, Even though it's all part of the journey,
Definitely, it's definitely part of the journey, and I'm glad. I'm glad I had a business background, so that I could survive through all the ups and downs in our business too.
It helps.
It's a rocky road,
When did you meet Dave?
I met Dave in 1970, I think. A buddy of mine from high school came to me and he said, you need to meet this guy, Dave Jenkins. You need to hear him sing. And I remember meeting him in Palo Alto, and he was at a music store. I think he was teaching there, so we just got together, and I heard him sing, and I was like, man, I just love your voice, And I really, it was a very unique voice for that time too. And then along the way on the road, I went with Stoneground. I met Bud Cockrell, who was the other original lead singer.
Is he the other voice?
Yeah, and What You're Gonna Do.
And What You're Gonna Do, the graspier, grovel.
Unfortunately, sorry to say, he passed away, but he was a monster, man. He was such a great singer. And he was in a band called It's a Beautiful Day. Mm-hmm. And he was playing bass with Beautiful Day and singing, and I saw him. I think I met him somewhere in the South when we were out there with Stoneground. And I said, hey, give me your number, man, because I'm thinking about putting a band together, and if you ever decide to leave Beautiful Day, give me a call. And he did, and so I got.
They were out of San Francisco.
Yeah, San Francisco was amazing at that time.
I was right in the middle of it.
The middle of the scene for the Fillmore, last days of the Fillmore, and all that. It was like there's a lot of camaraderie. Everybody knew each other. Everybody's playing the same venues. We also had a lot of clubs in the city. That time it was a lot of fun, and you could see anybody you wanted to at most of the clubs.
And there was a scene going on down here too that was evolving in Laurel Canyon and whatnot too.
Oh, yeah.
So all those bands, and it was quite a vibe.
Yeah.
It was indeed. So 1975 comes around, you're signed, you release a record, it's got two big hits, Love Will Find a Way, What You Gonna Do.
Actually, it was two albums. The first album was called Place in the Sun. That was actually our third album.
Which is a great...
Which had What You're Gonna Do on it. And then Place in the Sun became a hit, and there were a couple other hits in there, but not top five, which What You're Gonna Do was. And then we came out with, that story's crazy because we had 3 years with A&M, made 3 albums. A&M spent a ton of money to develop the band, and then What You're Gonna Do comes out, and Dave's singing half of it and Bud singing the other half, and literally, I was with our manager, Bob Brown, in his living room listening to the countdown on KFRC in San Francisco, and What You Gonna Do went into the top 10. And it was amazing because Bud called me right then in that countdown and said, I'm quitting. And he quit the band because A&M gave him his own deal, which made no sense at all. But his wife, Patti Santos, who sang Whitebird and It's a Beautiful Day, which was a big hit, and they got behind him, and it made no sense. They spent all this money getting Pablo Cruz in the charts, and then they take away, a major player. Bud was like Joe Cocker in our band. I mean, he's an incredible singer, an
Great
incredible
voice.
performer.
And a unique voice.
Yeah, and so then all of a sudden he's gone, and so then it just leaned on Dave and I to figure it out, and we, you know, we auditioned all these bass players, singers. It was really tough, and we, you know, making a record. We had to follow up, and so he and I, we wrote "Love Will Find a Way," and we were in the studio. That record came together magically, but we didn't really. We found a guy, Bruce Day, to play bass in the band. And sing, and he represented us well, but he did not play in the studio. We used Mike Piccaro, you know, Jeff Piccaro's brother, and Steve Piccaro's brother, and he was great. And you know, Larry Antonino, who's with us now, we always say if we'd found him back then, we would have been in much better shape, because it was a tough deal not having a real, you know, solid guy playing bass.
Yeah, you got to have a rhythm
and
section.
Bud was really solid, you know, and so when he left, it was like everybody was like, well, what are you guys going to do now? And then all of a sudden, Love Will Find a Way goes in the top 5, and that album was sold like crazy.
What an appropriate name, especially in this story, and thank you for that, is Love Will Find a Way, and it did, you know.
Yeah.
You can't go more than an hour or two on the bridge on Sirius XM and not hear What You Gonna Do or Love Will Find a Way.
Right.
It's in medium to medium heavy rotation, but yet I don't hear It's a Beautiful Day. I don't hear their song.
Well, that's like pushing. That's 60s, you know. So we fell into a funny place though, because we really were right before MTV. You know, and Love Will Find a Way was a huge hit, but it was before MTV really hit, which was what really kicked off the 80s. Some guy just recently did the San Jose Mercury did an article, and he says Pablo Cruz was yacht rock before yacht rock.
Yacht rock, yeah.
And
you know, that's interesting.
And that's the term that we've kind of fallen into, and I don't mind it. I mean, I think it's appropriate for all those records.
I was going to ask you about that because, you know, back in that era, you know, Doobie Brothers, Chris Ray, Rupert Holmes, Christopher Cross, you know, all of these great hits, you know, and Pablo Cruz and What You Gonna Do, and did you have any idea that that era and those songs and those bands were actually going to create a genre that had its own name? It wasn't rock, it wasn't pop, it wasn't blues, it was yacht rock. I mean,
I don't think that I had any idea they were going to do that, but I get it. I mean, it's like, you know, you had to have some sort of, you know, label, you know, just like punk rock or whatever, you know, which is what pretty much, you know, I did as part of a documentary called The Reign, the Ruin, and the Resurrection of Soft Rock, which was a really well done documentary, and it chronicled pretty much all the bands in our era, you know, like bands like Ambrosia and people like Firefall, and even Kenny
Dewey
Loggins,
Brunel.
and, you know, but the you know, the term, I remember the producer was a friend of mine, and he called me and he says, do you mind being termed soft rock or yacht rock? I said, you know, at this point in time, you can call us whatever you want. You know, it's like, it's fine, you know, and yet it was really an interesting, you know, documentary, because what it basically said was then as soon as people saw, you know, the Ramones and the Police and those bands started making records and coming out, it's just like leveled the playing field for all of us, you know. You know.
How do you mean?
Well, just in terms of how the records we were making. I mean, they were really soft rock, you know. I mean,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
In fact, I did a whole segment in the documentary on the Fender Rhodes, and you know how the Fender Rhodes was kind of like the sort of the meat of a lot of those records.
That sound.
Sound. You know, I mean, it's still used all the time, but I mean, as soon as the Police came, here's a trio that comes out, and they're just pretty, you know, rough around the edge, but great music and stuff. It changed the whole, you know, landscape.
Well, I think a lot of these bands, as we're talking about this, my mind's going, you know, all of these groups had one thing in common, although they were all different, was a great songwriter. You know, it got down to the song, you know.
Always.
It didn't matter how they were performing it or what instrumentation they were using it. It really got down to that song. You know, how did that song, and you know, could Every Breath You Take been a hit with? You know, it's been covered by so many people. By anyone other than the Police? I think so. I think it could, because it's a great song, you know.
Yeah, but
I'm not sure about Pablo Cruz, because your vibe and your writing really needed the band and the sound that you had.
Yeah, but they always say, and it's true to this day. It's like, you know, if you're gonna, you know, if you've got a great song, you should be able to play it just on the piano or on a guitar and sing it, and it should be a great, you know, you right then you go, this is a great tune.
Yeah.
I mean, you can produce it, you know, as many ways as you want, but but it was all, and it still is. It's about the artists that are doing the songs. I mean, I've heard Rihanna sung so many different ways by a lot of new young singers, and they're great. I mean, they're better than Fleetwood Mac, than Stevie's version.
That's a good point.
But they're really just beautiful, stellar little singers, and they kill it, you know. And so, to your point, yeah, it could be. But in the beginning, I think it's the craft, the artist that is what, you know, draws the audience in.
The distinct sound that they bring.
Yeah, I mean,
to that writing. That's a great point, and you know, Pablo had that distinct sound, and now it's, you know, like I said, you can't turn on The Bridge on Sirius and listen to more than an hour before you hear, you know, Pablo come up. It happened today. I was on my way out to come to Los Angeles to hit the plane. I get in the car, I turn on the car, and what's on the radio? What you gonna do? You know,
That's great.
That's kind of cool, you know.
Yeah, good.
So you know, it's always interesting when you hear your songs on the radio. What was it like, you know, to hear multiple songs of yours, you know, come up, and you're a humble guy. I get that feeling.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Not really. Let's hang out. Just kidding. You know, we sit in the studio for years making records, and it's like, am I going to get is this actually going to get on the radio? So, you know, honestly, I remember where I was the first time What You Gonna Do came on the radio, and it's an incredible, you know, feeling. But, you know, it's also scary, because it's like, once it gets on the radio, is it going to translate across the country? Is it going to, you know, hit all the big stations? And you follow it. I mean, I'm a chart freak, and I was watching the record, and What You Gonna Do was painful, because it went up, and the next week it lost its bullet and went down, and then it went back up. All of a sudden it got there, you know, and that's when you've arrived, actually. I mean, when that happens, then the phones start ringing, you know, now you're a national act. And so, and then
and it goes quick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It does, actually.
Overnight successes take years, but then it moves quick.
Which was why we were like a three-legged dog when Bud Cockrell quit the band right when the record goes in the top 10.
Yeah, that must have been tough.
It was very tough, you know. I mean, Dave and I got through it, and we wrote the next album was way better than the Place in the Sun album, and it did really well. It got a lot of we sold a lot of records, but it also got a lot of attention critically, you know. It's the greatest thing to hear your stuff on the radio.
It's almost a surreal moment. It's like you hear that first part and say, I recognize that song.
Yeah.
This is somebody took my song. Yeah.
No, it is. I mean, I've written a lot of stuff that's gotten covered too by other artists, so that's kind of a cool thing.
And that's an honor too, you know, to have somebody cover a song, or do one of your songs that you've either previously recorded or written for them, or had your catalog covered. So you've had a lot of that too, and then your career kind of took a turn, and so let's talk about that. We're talking a lot about film and TV in this season of Big Yard, and tell us how that happened for you, because you had an incredible ride with a theme song that you wrote for Baywatch, you know, that did very well, and
just a little bit.
Yeah. And so you probably didn't know that in the beginning either.
What happened was that Dave Jenkins and I wrote Pablo Cruz's repertoire, and we tell the story in the show. I mean, we basically hit a wall. We just couldn't get out of each other's way. We weren't getting along that well, and then I got married, and I went out on one tour, and I was like, I'm either going to be married or I'm going to tour, because I mean, when you're out on the road and you're away from your wife for a long time, it's very hard, and every night's New Year's Eve, and you gotta really temper yourself. So fortunately, in the Pablo Cruz career, we had certain instrumentals that got a lot of airplay on, like especially a Wide World of Sports, if you remember that show.
Sure.
And so in the Olympics, and so they were instrumentals, and then they turned up in some movies and whatnot. So the music supervisor, a buddy of mine, Joel Sill, who was over at A&M, he kind of helped me get into the TV scene. And in fact, all the execs over at A&M were really supportive, and I ended up getting a movie called One Crazy Summer, which was a ridiculous movie. It was with Demi Moore and John Cusack and Bobcat Goldthwait. And it was just a ridiculous movie. But it was
that must have been fun on the set, though.
Well, I didn't have anything to do with the set. I just had to, write the score, and that was very scary, because I mean, it's coming from making a record every 2 years, 12 songs to a deadline of like, okay, you've got 60 minutes of music you need to write.
Were you comfortable with that in that environment at first, or did you have to grow into it?
I mean, I worked through it, but I really enjoyed it too. There's a real challenge to like score a piece, to a scene, and there were some great scenes, these boat races and things like that were very compelling to write to. But also the beauty of it too was I was able to keep playing and writing, and I was home.
Yeah.
So I sort of worked through it and got some great shows right away. One of my favorite ones, which got canceled, was called Max Headroom, which was, I don't know if you remember that, but a brilliant show. Unfortunately, it was probably a little too smart for the public. It was a very futuristic kind of show.
It was.
And a really expensive show. They had sets up in San Francisco, and they had sets down here, and that was really a challenge, because back then we didn't have even fax machines. We had modems, that would, like, you'd get the spotting notes for the show, and it would just spit it out like it takes 6 hours to get the notes for the show, and then they call up and say, we need the score on. It's on a Tuesday. We need it Thursday. And you're like, so wow. Practically had a nervous breakdown doing that. But eventually figured it out and reached a stride. And when you're doing that, you just hope that you've got great executive producers and people that, you can get on the phone and you have a good relationship. You're not afraid of them.
Sure. So Baywatch happens.
Yeah.
And then gets another season and it grows, and and a huge fan. So what happens when it reaches syndication? Did that take you by surprise?
Well, it was very good. It was a good business. Baywatch is still all over the world. Still,
that's right.
It's kind of, but it was really touch and go, because the very first season was on NBC, and we did the show, and it got lukewarm reviews in America, but it blew up because of Hasselhoff. It blew up in Europe, especially in Germany and England. It was like the #1 show, and so the executive producers just worked a deal to redo the show, and the main guy, Greg Bonin, who was a very good friend of mine, called me and he said, look, we're going to bring the show back, and he goes, I'll guarantee you can do the show as long as you want, but we won't be able to pay you what the network pays you. But he said, you're going to be happy if we can put this together and keep it going. And we ended up doing 300 episodes, and we did 11 seasons.
So you rescored a lot of that?
No, I'm saying that each year it just kept getting bigger and bigger. I mean, in like mid-90s, with the girls that were on with Pam Anderson, Yasmin Bleeth, it was pretty cool show to watch. And it was fun to write too, because it was you could write that in the middle of the night, and it was beautiful to look at,
So you got songs on the radio, Baywatch comes out, you write the theme. What's it like to
I wrote the underscore too, all the drama. It wasn't just the theme. I had a partner, John DeAndrea, who
and you wrote the ins and the outs and the background and all of that, right?
Yeah, all the action.
So what's it like to tell us what's it like to sit and watch a TV show and hear everything that you've written?
Well,
that's gotta be kind of cool.
It's great, you know. You just hope that whoever's mixing the show pays attention to the music. I mean, you know, a lot of music, especially today, because the sound effects are so massive, you know, that you really sometimes the music can get.
So were you doing
crunched.
the Foley and everything?
No, but I'm just saying that sometimes you get the score, and because you're in the studio, you're just watching the picture, and it's coming across like a record, you know, because it's all you're listening to.
Right.
But then, you know, we're fighting waves and, you know, helicopters and you know, all this huge artillery, and it's really, really, you know, and you had to. It was a learning curve even to figure out what frequencies to write in so that you get past the you know, the helicopters and waves are huge, really loud, you know, and so that was a big learning curve too. But thank God the producers, you know, liked what we were doing enough to keep us in there, because every year you're like, are we going to still have this job? Because we were doing I did a lot of shows besides Baywatch, you know, that were, you know, like Flipper and Diagnosis Murder and shows like that, which were really pretty subdued. But Baywatch was high action. But waiting in the middle of the night watching Pam Anderson come down the beach in slow motion, great fun.
Great fun. So now you got this career, you know, young songwriter with a band. You meet a co-writer. You have these hits. You through some friends and some people that you know. You get into the film and TV business. You have a huge success there, and now we get to put out Pablo Cruz again? I mean, what were you thinking? Were you thinking, I want to just go back out on the road. I want to recreate this magic?
That's pretty much what happened. I mean, I fought it for a long time. Dave Jenkins actually went out with the band without me, and I don't know, he wasn't loving it that much, and so he stopped and just laid it down. And then eventually, actually our drummer, Steve, had a wedding, and he calls us up and said, would you guys play a couple songs at our wedding?
No kidding.
And that's how we kind of got back together, and Dave and I sort
of... You felt the magic.
Yeah. We were like, hey, well, maybe we should do this. And then we went out and started doing some shows. I mean, there was definitely business out there for Pablo Cruz if we wanted to come back. And then and we had another guy, a great composer friend of mine who played bass, but he was really a fusion guitar player. And you know, he didn't lock in. And then we met Larry Antonino.
So I know Larry's side of the story, and how he got the call and how he reached out to you. Let me hear your side.
Well, the best part was he went and listened to all the records, you know, that Bud played.
He came prepared.
Yeah, very much so. And I kind of pushed him a bit. I had him sing. I think it was. What was it? The first song, was it the main title? No, it was Place in the Sun. So yeah, so I asked Larry to, you know, audition that, and he came back, and it was like great. And so we just, you know, from that point on, it was just, we had a band again, and we really did, because we had the nucleus. So we had Steve on drums and Dave and I. It was always a quartet. So and so when Larry came in to play, all of a sudden it was like, yeah, this definitely is fun, because it made the playing effortless. When you have like a fusion bass player playing, it's very frantic, you know.
you got a bottom, and he knows how to lay that down.
Yeah, definitely.
He knows how to be behind the beat, in front of the beat, on the beat.
Yeah.
You know, it's great to hear your side of the story, because I guess after the first time sitting with you, he came back, and as he puts it to me, he didn't really know if he had scored and what was going on. He goes, man, what's it take to get a gig in this town, you know? And he went back and he did some more preparation. He said, I'm going to get this job. And he sent you another tape. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we were all...
Did you already know? It's like, this guy's got...
Yeah, I mean, it was just, it was kind of just a little gun shy, because we, you know, it had to be right this time if we were going to do this again, you know, to go back out and play, you know, and it really fell into place. I mean,
so when he sent the tape back to you, was that the defining moment? Or?
Yeah, pretty much. That was the part where, you know, I called Dave and I said, I think we got a bass player who can sing. A great singer, great bass player, and you know, I didn't particularly like him, but I got to tell you that it was no, he's like the best guy.
I don't particularly like him too, but I love him.
Yeah, exactly.
I love.
No,
and you know what's great about Larry too is he's got a great sensibility in terms of as a producer, his vocal arrangements and how he can build a drum track. He can do all these great things. And on the new record, we're doing a lot of collaboration. I live in Scottsdale. He lives in Los Angeles, and we go back and forth on the phone. You know.
Yeah. No, he's very easy to work with just because, you know, he does a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's not just, you know, bass player. You know, he's definitely
So I hear you guys have a lot of fun on the road when you're out, and you take good care of these guys.
Well, if we didn't, we wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
Great
it's because
point.
it's not. There's a lot. The worst part about the road is just the travel. I mean, it gets crazier and crazier.
A lot of hurry up and wait.
The airports and all that is, you know, but it's miraculous because we've actually really done a lot of shows in the last couple of years, and we always seem to get there, and you know, and flights are good, and we get there on time, and you know, and we do have a lot of fun, you know. So the show is a lot of fun. Just a lot of laughs in the show.
You got a lot of fans.
We do.
What's your favorite part of being out on the road besides the camaraderie? And you know, I know what the challenges are, but what's your favorite part about being on the road? Is it the show?
Yeah.
75 minutes.
Many times it's like 2 hours, you know.
So those.
But I mean, the thing about it is when you get the show down, it's pretty pat, the show right now, in terms of the delivery and the timing and everything. And so when, you know, no matter what your day's like, as soon as you get up there, you start playing the first song. It's just like you know, you're home. It's good.
So a lot of fans and people in our audience don't realize really what goes on with that, you know, and they see you guys on stage and under the lights, you know, and they don't know what it takes to get there and all of that. And we talk a lot about that here in the Yard. But there are challenges too, and as somebody that, a creative guy that's had incredible success, when you go back out on the road, I'm sure you've come across a couple of promoters and a couple of venues, and you say, you know, what? Yeah.
Why am I doing this?
Why am I doing this? You know.
Yeah, I have to say we've been pretty lucky. You know, nobody's, you know, we've been pretty lucky that way. I mean, sometimes some of the producers are, you know, a little light on how they handle stuff, but for the most part, we're playing really nice theaters, we're playing nice venues, and I'm playing with some great bands too as well. If we do co-bill, you know, so in fact, we're playing with Christopher Cross next week, which will be a really good bill for the
I heard
Pablo
he's
Cruz.
coming to Scottsdale. I'm gonna.
Yeah, I'm anxious to see his show. I haven't seen it.
Me too. Yeah.
But for the most part, I mean, considering how much we have been playing, it's been pretty smooth. I mean, it's just sometimes it's kind of comedic. I mean, this last week we went to Fargo. It's like we're going to Fargo. Nobody knows where Fargo is, and we just travel, and boom, there we are in Fargo. And the audience was amazing. I mean, it was a really great audience, and they very appreciative, really nice people, and we do our fair share of, you know, getting out and mingling with people, and they, you know.
That's good that you want to be out with the fans. And, you know, the Pablo sound, the Pablo vibe, you know, fans come to you guys and out to see your show because they love this vibe that you have. So, you know, there's already, just to, you know, sit down at a Pablo show is you know, there's love in the audience, you know.
Yeah, and that's pretty much our MO. Love will find a way. I mean, we really stress that at the end of the show, that, you know, we're here to bring you guys joy. There's a lot of humor in the show. We have a lot of humor between us and play around, you know, fool around with each other. And Robbie Wyckoff, who's, you know, fronting the band a lot, is just an amazing guy to travel with, a great singer.
He's doing a good job.
He does a great job.
Yeah.
He does a great job, and Sergio Gonzalez on drums. I mean, it's you know, there's a lot of camaraderie that way, and everybody knows which way each guy's going on stage, and there's a lot of you know, I mean, we even, you know, there's things that we do that aren't necessarily something other bands will do, where we'll take a minute. We run a video in the beginning of our show, which is about 8-minute kind of history, and it's sort of comedic of Pablo Cruz, and the opening line is like, you know, we're here to bring you a lot of joy and a great time, and if you're not happy with the show, there's a money-back guarantee. And that's how we start the show. And I can always tell, all of us can, if that audience doesn't laugh at that, we got a problem. Because it's true, because there's certain punchlines through that video, and if they're hitting the punchlines, and sometimes people are going berserk, and other times it's dead silent, and then we go, okay, we got to go to work, But what I was going to say is that even we take a second, and each guy introduces himself. I'll introduce Larry Antonino, and he'll tell his story a little bit, and that really helps for people to know that these guys just aren't, just guys like, side guys playing, but these guys have careers, because they all do have. I mean, Robbie
and some of your earlier fans know that that Bud's not there, and by the time your show's into the third or fourth song, God bless Bud, but they don't miss Bud, because here's Pablo. And Pablo's doing its thing.
I mean, it's a lot easier than, if it was Huey Lewis, where Huey can't be there anymore, because he can't sing
or Journey and Steve Perry can't be there.
Yeah. Journey did a little better job when they, because it's the name of the band, not the name of the artist.
Yeah, and Huey, what a nice man. I've known Huey for so long, and I played with him and did booking with him. I've got some great stories on Huey. But Pablo, the vibe, the whole thing. We're in a different time now. It's a different vibe. We're not. It's not the '80s. It's not flower.
You mean musically with what's happening
in the world in general?
Oh,
so,
God.
do you see a difference in how your shows came off then, as to how they're coming off now? I know your fans are coming out. They're older fans, obviously, but this break from the rest of the world and the madness. Do you find that the Pablo fans relate to that and they enjoy it and they embrace that?
Yeah, I do. I think people, I think for all the shows, no matter who it is from that era, the people that come out, they want to relive, that era. They want to relive where they were with those songs, and that's what you hear a lot when you come off stage. People say, I saw you guys in 1977, I saw you guys in 1978 or whatever, and that's what it is, and that's how the business works too, because the audience is an audience that you basically procured back then when you had those hits. They'll bring their grandkids, or they'll bring their kids or something to kind of turn them on to the band. But it's not. I just really think that's why people. It's a lot of nostalgia. That's why people love to see. All, like, even when we play with Kenny Loggins. Kenny's show is pretty much, the hits are all pretty much 80s, 90s. The big hits, but as soon as you hear them, you're in, and it takes you back to that. That's the beauty of music, I think.
I do too.
It just brings you back to where you were when you first heard that song. Or if you listen to like any Beatle record, you probably know when you heard the first song from Rubber Soul, or from
Where were you when you heard John Lennon? Yeah. Man, do you recognize any of your fans from back then? And they come up to you and and they say, "Man, I saw you."
That's a little rough.
Yeah,
because
they still got long hair. It's a little gray.
One of the jokes that we start the show out is that please don't rush the stage, because we can't take that. And then we make a joke about how, because people do rush the stage, they try to get up on the stage, and then they can't get up on the stage, and they're stuck, and it messes the whole
and let's
show.
Not have a mosh pit, because I'm afraid you guys are going to drop me.
And people, that's a challenge for our audience to even get them up, because a lot of people. It's tough to get up.
Well, I enjoy that, actually. When I go to see a show, I know that the people in front of me, because I always get pretty good seats, and the people in front of me are going to stand. Like, I paid, I think, $1,200 to see Billy Joel just a few months ago, and the 20 rows in front of me didn't have a good enough seat. And so, we stood the whole show. So I like
That's kind of a drag, though. I did this, just saw the Rolling Stones last month, and we had really good seats, but there was this guy, like 12-foot guy in front of me.
Always.
The guy stands up, and I'm
always.
and I didn't know what to do because we had to kind of look over here, see Mick over here, and then finally the guy got tired and sat down, and the show came together.
Thank God.
But that's a rule in a lot of theaters too. They don't want people to stand up.
Rod Stewart on his last tour, he said, "Listen, I want everybody to sit."
But we push to get everybody up at the end of the show. They're always up at the end of the show when we're playing, the hits and stuff.
And that's the perfect time for it.
Yeah.
I can't help but notice that we've got a piano.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for this though.
And so we've had this incredible interview and talk with Corey Lerios. Have you gotten to know him? And what can you share with us today, man? This is an instrument that's been very, very good.
Darryl, this is like I draw a blank.
Should we take it out? Let's keep it in the room. Let's keep it in the room. Beautiful.
I've written a lot of comedic stuff. One that we do in the show is I introduce it as a song I wrote for my kids who are now grown. But if you have grandkids, you can relate to this. This is called "I Get Tired Just Thinking of You." That's all. Hope you enjoy the song. I get tired thinking of you, and I just want to relax when I come home. And I'm so tired, baby, what can I do? With all the noise and all the toys, the scratching and biting and all the fighting. Someone release me, please. I think I'm about to scream. Honey, you know how much I love you, but I've had enough. And keeping up with you is getting kind of rough. I think I'll feel a headache coming on real strong. Sweetie, can you kindly please just take it to the other room? Could you give me just a second, 'cause it's way too soon for me to deal with you right now. And I get tired just thinking of you. It's a classical case of fatigue. And every time you come in the room, darling, I wanna lay down. I wanna lay down. I gotta lay down and take a nap. The end. There you go.
Oh, beautiful. Like sitting with Corey in your living room. What's next?
What's next?
What's next?
You mean musically?
Musically, in your
I've
life.
been playing a lot.
We're delving into the life of Corey.
I like to sit at the grand piano and just come up with new, ideas, and I do that a lot.
I sense that Billy announced his retirement a year or so ago. Went out on this massive tour and then ended up at his residency in Madison Square. I have a feeling that Billy's going to go and sit in his beautiful home with his grand piano and still play. He is the piano man.
You don't ever stop playing. You don't really give up.
Do you play at home just to sit down and play?
I've got beautiful grands at my house, and I sit down and I don't like playing digital pianos really. I mean, it's fine for the road with the band. It's just much more economic.
But you like that sound, that acoustic sound.
Oh yeah.
And the feel of it.
Oh God.
So you probably entertain a lot in your home. And
I used to for the dog. The dog watched me in the entry hall all the time. Very attentive. No, I play pretty regularly though.
And so when you entertain and you have people over, do you sit at the piano and play some songs for them?
Sometimes,
Yeah, I bet that's beautiful. I bet everybody enjoys that.
If they don't, I tell them they got to go home. No, it's just a great fun thing to do, is to play. I mean, it's always been that way, and the best is not to have any pressure doing it, just letting it flow and see what you come up with, ideas and things.
I find music is that way. It's an offering. It's just a way of putting out a little bit of love and your talent that we've been blessed with, and sharing it, and when it's done, it's done. Let's move on. We got life to live too. We all put on pants in the morning. We all deal with the same stuff. We're before we wrap it up, there's a couple questions that we love to ask, and for people just to get to know you a little bit more. So, if you could listen to nothing else but just one song or from one artist, what would it be?
That's like a pretty difficult question.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I'd say the Star Spangled Banner, man.
Amen.
I was kidding.
I love that answer.
No, I always tell people go, "What's the last thing you wrote?" I said the Star Spangled Banner, and they'll be like, "Wow, that's amazing."
It's like in my show, I start off and I play Sounds of Silence, and I say, and those guys just ripped me off. Those guys,
yeah, right.
I never saw a penny. An artist. Okay, let's just go to an artist. What artist?
There's a lot of artists that I love to listen to, but I would have to say, because I listened to so much of it, would probably be from the piano standpoint, would have been Elton, especially in the early days. Elton John,
huge catalog.
Just some of those early records were just incredible.
Huge catalog.
The arrangements are incredible.
Prolific.
And Billy Joel. I love Billy.
Well, those two guys, and they had a little riff for a long time. Who's got the bigger catalog and whatnot? And now they've, those guys have a symbiotic relationship and they respect one another. But for a long time, and I think that's good because I think they drove each other for a while. On both sides of the pond. Those two guys.
Yeah. When they were playing, you mean when they were playing together?
Yeah. And Billy's records were out and Elton's records were out, and of course Elton was so incredibly prolific. I think in his first 2 or 3 years he put out four records, something like that. It was amazing. Of course,
the difference
he had
Bernie Taupin was writing all the lyrics, where Billy's was pretty much wrote all those songs.
I was asked
Billy's
to
a
do
great lyricist.
Oh yeah, incredible. I was recently asked to do an interview with a Flex magazine out of the UK. And on this interview, they asked me what my 5 favorite songs are, and I had to really put some thought into it. But Billy was one of them, and it was Scenes from Italian Restaurant. I love that.
Beautiful record.
Yeah, and I just love the way he builds that story and in and out of tempo and genre and whatnot. And it's just, and I see him playing that, for a private party in his estate. We end our shows with a slightly morbid question, and I say that to be flip, but I know you've got a lot still to do, and you're still having a great time, and you're out touring around the country and playing shows and with your fans and meeting new fans. But and I wish you all the happiness in all of our remaining days. But how would you want to be remembered? How do you want people to remember Corey Lerios?
Total megalomaniac, egotistical narcissist. Okay. That's such a hard question. I mean, I think I'd like to be remembered first and foremost as a good father, as a good dad. Right. I mean, my kids and my family are huge in my life. Amen. And I devote a lot of time to them, and they devote a lot of time to me. So that's probably the first thing. And then you do leave behind the music. I mean, there's just all the music that I've been a part of over the years. So to be remembered by that, I think there's something really special about that we, not to be, I mean, critical, but I mean, that is kind of the beauty for us musicians. We do leave behind that mark on, if we've made records and we leave that behind.
It's a
you know,
beautiful
some
thing.
great piece of music that we wrote, something like that, you know, as opposed to, and no offense, but as opposed to, he was a great golfer. You know, there's just something really special to me about that. I mean, when I think we had a friend just pass away, Greg Kinn. I don't know, did you know Greg?
I knew Greg very well.
Yeah, well, did you know he passed away? So he was 75. But he, you know, he was a sweet guy, and he, you know, and I thought about it when I read about that, and I thought, you know, he had a real personality, you know, too. You know, he had a and he left behind, you know, this kind of repertoire. You know,
he did, and he had a good ride, and I remember doing well. I had Larry, and we did some shows with him, and when he was with City and Gavin Christopher, and then I knew his manager real well, Rocky, and that whole San Francisco scene, and then I booked Greg on a solo show in a hotel. I think back in probably the 80s, maybe.
So were you a South Bay guy? It sounds like you're from San Jose, South Bay, Silicon Valley.
Yeah, kind of. I had Silicon Valley, and then I moved to Discovery Bay, but never thought I'd leave there. But Greg sat down with a crowd of about 400 in a hotel ballroom with just his guitar.
Yeah.
And he was just as dynamic. You said earlier in your interview, a great song can be played with a guitar or a piano.
Right.
And it was amazing. And then he went on to become a DJ. He was a DJ at a radio
That's
station.
the last time I spoke to him. He called me and said, you want to do an interview, and he was on the air in San Jose. Well, listen, Darryl, thank
Corey,
you. Thank you.
Man, thanks
It's
for
nice
coming
to
into
meet
the
you.
yard with us. Incredible. We're so blessed, man, and thank you so much, man. So I'm going to wish you the safest of journeys.
I appreciate it. Back at you.
Yeah, man, thank you so much. And, you know, this has been something I've looked forward to sit down with you. And so thank you very much. And so for fans of Corey, reach out. How do they stay in touch with you, Corey?
Well, it's you can go to pablocruz.com,
Okay.
or you can go to CoreyCharles.com.
Okay. Corey Larios. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us in another episode of The Yard. We're going to be back. See you soon. God bless everybody. We'll see you next time.